believe that Wuthering Waves is in serious need of some more 4 stars. Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. I was discussing this with my good friend Sweatpants, who saved Pridwin, by the way, and he brought up how this would be a pretty good idea for a video, so I was like, yeah, you know what? That is actually true. So let's talk about it. Wuthering Waves really needs more 4-star characters. The last 4-star character we got was in 1.4, and we got Lumi, who is just not a good character by any stretch of the imagination. Sequences just do not save her. She's one of the most underwhelming characters in the game, and we just haven't seen a new 4-star since her. And if you look at the upcoming drip marketing for 2.2, we only have Cantarella, who is a 5-star, and at 2.1, we got Phoebe and Brandt, who are both 5 stars. Carlotta and Roshia, also both 5 stars. Why was Roshia a 5-star? There wasn't really any reason for her to be. She could have very easily been a 4-star, and I don't think anyone would have complained. Of all of the dripped rinascita cast that we got before the region came out, I don't think a single one of them is gonna end up being a 4-star, even though Roshia could have very well ended up being one, and even then, that's still pretty dire, because that would be one confirmed 4-star. You see, here's the thing. The game came out in 1.0 with some really solid 4-star characters. Like, we do have access to some really good 4-star options. For example, Songhwa is literally insane. She is incredibly versatile, has a ton of positive qualities, and can fit into almost any team in the game. She is an amazing character and is highly contested in the meta at the moment. Mortefi, where he works really well, and does some solid personal damage too. Donjin is a really strong 4-star DPS, who in the hands of the right player is absolutely insane. Yuan-Wu is a great niche free-to-play friendly pick in Jinshi teams. Yang Yang is a great alternative to Jojo and Carlotta teams if you don't have access to Vasily Painter. So I'm not trying to say that as of now in the game's current state, we don't have any good 4-star characters. We absolutely do. We have great options that can absolutely form some very free-to-play friendly teams. Not to mention how the Rover is a completely free character that we all have access to considering that they are the main character, and they have 2 very strong forms. Spectral recently got a massive buff because if you pull for Phoebe, now you can use Spectral Rover as a 2nd slot teammate in order to apply Spectral Frazzle to the enemies, thus supporting Phoebe's Absolution mode. Or you can play as Havoc mode, which has been good ever since everybody first got it in 1.0. Obviously, Rover's not a 4-star, they technically count as a 5-star, but because literally everybody and their mother has them, I'm gonna group them in with the rest of these characters. And I understand that there's going to be some bad characters in the game, that's fine. Where there is the desirable, there is the undesirable, as long as the majority of 4-star releases are not overwhelmingly bad. That's okay, I get that. But here's the thing, if the game continues like this, and we just continue to barely get any 4-star releases, and when we do, they tend to be very underwhelming, team building is going to be less and less free-to-play friendly over time, especially whenever units start to get more niche, and their kits become more specific, thus demanding more specific types of supports, which might only be covered by other 5-star characters, thus making the baseline barrier to entry for certain teams higher than others. We are currently blessed to be in a state where a very strong character such as Phoebe, who can be played as a main DPS, can use 2 free characters in our best install team, those being Songhwa and Spectral Rover. However, there is only one Songhwa, there is only one Rover, and you cannot just split apart their modes. Okay, sure, the current handful of good 4-star characters that we have in the game as of now are able to cover for most teams, but as we get more limited 5-star DPSs, that's going to not be the case. They have to keep up with these new releases with new 4-star characters to support them. It's completely fine if they're not as good as the 5-star options, however, there needs to at least be more alternatives being added into the game over time. Another thing that I'd like to point out, if you take a look at the brand new 4-star characters that WuWa has released, not the 1.0 units, the 1.0 4-stars, as far as I'm concerned, are pretty solid. Baichi is literally free and is a very solid healer. Yang Yang is free, she's really decent, Songhwa is free, you get the drill. The 1.0 units, cool. There's only 3 that I would consider to be truly below average, those being Chishia, Taochi, and Alto. Alto especially, I'm sorry dude, what the heck. Kuro did not do your power level justice. But in any case, Yohu came out alongside Shorekeeper, but she's just really underwhelming. There is no situation in which you would rather use Yohu over Baichi. She buffs coordinated attacks, so you would think that in teams where Jojo is being used, she will be a good 3rd slot teammate in order to allow your Verena or Shorekeeper to save some vigor for some other teams. But no, you would rather use Baichi in almost every situation? Yohu has far too much nonsense going on in her kit to be worth using. In pretty much every circumstance, Baichi's rotation is going to be faster and she's going to perform better on average in almost every team that you compare the two in. To put it into perspective for you, in Yohu's best-in-slot teams, she is equal to Baichi in performance, if not still a little worse. And might I remind you that Baichi is free? This character was extremely underwhelming. It's no wonder that pretty much everybody forgot about her after she came out, because she made absolutely no impact on the meta whatsoever. There was nothing to remember here. And sure, you can give her 5-piece Rejuvenating Glow and Fallacy of No Return for some extra buffing in her kit, but man, literally any other healer is capable of doing that. You don't have to specifically use Yohu to access those buffs. This isn't unique to her. This sadly makes Yohu an extremely lame unit that pretty much nobody should ever level up for any other reason, aside from if they like the character, because there is just no incentive to use her meta-wise. This makes the first 4-star release that Wuthering Waves has ever done quite a big disappointment, and sequences don't really save her. She's just a worse Baichi, why would you ever really want to use her? Then we arrive to the tragically depressing case of Lumi. This one is especially sad because it's so clear to me that Kuro Games put a lot of effort into her. Her character design is pretty objectively good. I think most people can look at her and agree, but she looks quite appealing. I think the light in her ears is nice, she has a cool light bulb tail, her animations are cute, and her face model looks really nice and unique. So they definitely put in effort. But sadly, her kit just didn't pan out. There's not really any reason to use her either, and that's mostly just because her rotation time is so slow. Sure, you can definitely work on speeding it up, but it's really hard to justify using Lumi over literally any other support. You can't justify her main DPS playstyle either because she just does like next to no damage. And once again, sequences unfortunately just don't save her. So this is another 4-star who, admittedly, had a lot of effort put into them as a character and got quite a lot of exposure in an event and whatnot. That's just going straight to the gutter. There's no reason to use the character, unfortunately. Now listen, I understand that perhaps Kuro Games just doesn't want to make a Bennett situation where there's one 4-star that is the be-all end-all of everything. I mean, they already did kind of do that with Sanhua anyways, but perhaps they're just trying to stray away from that. They want to make more specific 4-stars that are able to fulfill more specific niches. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in order to fulfill that, they have to actually make the 4-stars. And okay, I understand that people are not going to care about a 4-star nearly as much as they're going to care about a 5-star character, but if the 4-star is good, people are going to care, especially because of the accessibility factor. And might I add that typically speaking, in Wuthering Waves, sequence nodes are not that essential in order to make a character work. They can absolutely be a huge boost to a character's performance, don't get me wrong, but typically, you can get a lot of value out of these good characters, even with their first copy. So if they simply made more good 4-stars, I think people would absolutely have interest in playing them. Imagine if the people that put the love and care into Lumi's character design got to put that same love and care into her kit. I believe that she would have been a very successful unit. People did like her whenever she was revealed. Another reason as to why I think it's kind of sad that they don't make more 4-star characters is because they could easily use this as an opportunity to experiment with kits more. Think about it. They wouldn't have to make such tightly designed kits every time. They'd be able to be a bit more experimental and loose. And it's okay if some of them do end up being duds. At least an effort was made. But if there's no effort being made to make 4-stars in the first place, that's a bit rough. And it could be that they're not making 4-stars because there was low interest in Lumi and Yohu, but that's just because they weren't very good. I think if they made a 4-star frequently enough, like maybe one every other patch, which sounds like a lot, but I think it would do good in balancing out the 4-star to 5-star ratio in the future. It would also mean that people would have access to more accessible characters to build more often, thus creating more fun for a wider amount of people. It would also allow them to make niche buffers for specific units. For example, let's say they wanted to make a Jojo but Spectro to support Jinshi, but they don't really want to use up a limited 5-star slot for that. Well, then they can make a 4-star that does just that, and then at S6, they could be maybe 10% worse than Jojo for a Jinshi. I think that would be some pretty fair balancing. Essentially, not every character has to be a Sanhua, but I would say more like Mortefi would be really good, because that guy is amazing in his dedicated niche. He's not absolutely breaking the game or anything, but he's absolutely a high-tier, high-performing character that's really good at his specific job. He's very good down at S0, but his S6 is still undeniably a big improvement to him. To me at least, Mortefi is my golden standard as to how I want future 4-stars to be handled. A character that is really good in their specific niche, while not needing sequence nodes in order to be a good character, but still definitely benefiting from them. It is a perfect balance. We're already at a stage where there's way more 5 stars on the whole than 4 stars, even if you exclude the rovers, which is pretty unfortunate in my opinion. The 4 stars are supposed to be more common, not rarer. And on a side note, I also think that making more 4-star characters is going to allow them to be more experimental with character designs. Look at Lumi. She is a mouse that has light bulb features, and she's called Lumi, so she literally has lights in her ears. I'm not even a big Lumi fan or anything like that, but even I can admit that objectively speaking, that is a really fun idea. It just feels like a big missed opportunity on Kuro's part. I just really don't want it to get to a state where eventually all new 5-star characters want this specific 5-star teammate. We need to keep it so that 4-star teammates are still always in circulation, and they are as of now, but eventually there's only going to be so many Sanhwas, and there's only going to be so many characters that can utilize XYZ as one of their best in slots. It'll keep the game from becoming too daunting to get into, and I do think that as it stands, Wuthering Waves is a very free-to-play friendly gacha game by gacha game standards, for sure, especially with many positive qualities that it carries, such as the guaranteed weapon banner, but I think that more 4 stars will be the cherry on top. And if they really want to keep these releases infrequent and they don't want to make too many 4-star characters, fine, but at least make the ones that we do get as good as Mortefi or even Sanhua. Because if we almost never get them and they end up being a mid character in the end, they are going to very quickly fade into obscurity. So either drop a banger every now and then, or give us consistent decent units. I'm more on the side of consistent decent units personally, but at least a banger every now and then would be better than absolutely nothing. But what do you think about this matter? Do you also agree that Wuthering Waves needs more 4-star releases, or are you pretty happy with things as they are? Let me know down below, I'd love to hear your thoughts. As always, I have a ZZZ second channel. Head on over and subscribe if you're interested in some fun, silly ZZZ content. I'd also like to mention that I stream on Twitch. I stream once a week every week on Saturdays, started from 3 PM UK time. Come along so we can play Wuthering Waves, ZZZ, and do some more fun stuff together. Hopefully this video was able to tell you why I personally think that Wuthering Waves needs more 4-star characters. This has been Juice, signing out. And drop me your favorite 4-star design. Mine's easily Yang Yang.